Well, good evening. I'm Alan Jackson, and welcome to Nashville. Well, the world does not stop just because America had an election. Putin is now threatening NATO and talking about his nuclear arsenal. Hezbollah has begun reorganizing in Beirut. The Fed is not so sure anymore about cutting interest rates any further. And some Democrats are already organizing to fight any move on the illegal migrants in this country. And the list goes on. So we brought back our political travel guide, the former senator and ambassador, Scott Brown. Welcome back, Scott.
It's great to be on, Alan.
You know, sometimes I find the media and some liberal politicians just a bit predictable. No matter what the idea, they fly in the dark clouds. No discussion, no debate, no thinking. For example, it seems to be a great new idea to assign two very successful businessmen to trim the fat of government. Everybody knows there's a lot of waste there, yet the first reaction is why this cannot be done. So does that mean the Pentagon really should pay $400 of your money for a hammer? Or should we spend millions of dollars to test whether it's worth using seatbelts in Uganda? I can answer that one for free. I'd like to ask those same dark clouds whether they ever clean up their own family budgets. And if so, why not try to do the same with the taxes they pay? So Scott, here's the question. How do we move forward with this big mandate from the election? Seems to me things need to change.
Well, Alan, first of all, it's going to move forward regardless of what they say. We all know that there's a tremendous amount of waste in government. When I was there, I gave back $1 million a year just from my Senate office because I couldn't spend it all. And there's ways that, you know, if you don't spend it, then they're not allowed to carry it over. So everyone just spends it regardless of whether they need to spend it. There's a lot of just little things you can do. I mean, Elon said the goal is $2 trillion out of the 6 or 7, I don't even know what it is, 8 now. When I was there, as I referenced quite a few times in your show, it was $9 trillion. And that's still too much. So yeah, any effort to do that. I know Rand Paul has a great interest. There's others that are giving suggestions, and it's going to be a group effort. They'll do their best, and everyone will be kind of screaming and whining and blah, blah, blah. But, you know, we have to do it. Our country can't sustain this level of spending.
That's true. Well, if Elon Musk could cut Twitter by 80%, and it seems to be running just fine under the X brand, Ramaswamy founded a pharmaceutical company, and he made it quite successful. Aren't these exactly the kind of people who are perfect for saving us all money? Listen to how Vivek described the mission.
We're not going to be cutting ribbons, we're going to be cutting costs. And so those recommendations are going to be on a real-time basis. But I do want to take a big step back and understand, for people to understand the scope of this problem. Over $500 billion that's spent every year right now was not even authorized by Congress in the first place. The Pentagon has just failed its 7th consecutive audit, nearly $1 trillion of budget. They can't even tell you where it goes. So I think part of this is exposing for the public the extent of that rot and waste, but then to take steps first through executive action and then laying the groundwork for broader change through legislation as well to rein in that deficit, to rein in that budget.
Well, it just makes sense to me, right? Who wouldn't want to pay lower taxes?
Well, of course it makes sense, and that's the problem. Government sometimes, especially now, doesn't make sense. It hasn't for quite a while. And when I was a senator, I made many proposals to cut across the board, 5% every department. That would save a substantial amount of money. Then you throw in the fraud, waste, and abuse and the projects that have been funded and they're never going to be performed. Just got to get them off the books, get them back in the system, and just do a paper reduction. If we have a chance to reduce and refinance our national debt, become energy independent and start exporting energy so we can actually create more jobs and more money in the till, yeah, there's a lot of different things we can do. But to say you can't do anything, you can't look the American people in their eyes and say, gosh, we can't save you a penny. I'm sorry. It's so ridiculous. And people see through it. And that's respectfully why the president got elected, because he was going to be the change maker and try to fix a lot of these things.
During the campaign, Trump said he would stop taxing tips, that he would also look at reducing taxes on Social Security income and the SALT tax that hits taxpayers in high-tax states. Those are some of the reasons he got elected. They would surely help Democrats, independents, as well as Republicans, right? I mean, those aren't based towards one political party.
Well, it's interesting. I remember once again when I was serving either in the Massachusetts Senate or the U.S. Senate that I said to the folks who were against all this, Hey, you can pay more anytime you want. You can pay tip taxes on your tips. You can pay a higher amount. There is a box that helped pass legislation when I was in Massachusetts. You can actually pay, check the box and pay the higher amount. Yet there are folks who are in charge, who are senators and congressmen. They never did that. There's like 126 people in the entire state of 6+ million that decided to do that. My statement to a lot of those folks is, hey, just write a check. If you got so much money, just give it, because they'll waste it, they'll spend it, or you can actually do it a different way, which is what's being proposed right now.
Well, the president-elect and his new best friend went to Brownsville, Texas today to watch the launch of one of Elon Musk's reusable rocket systems.
3, 2, 1.
During the campaign, Trump often spoke about his desire to see NASA and Musk conduct a manned flight to Mars. Am I correct in thinking that these are aspirational moments that add to the enthusiasm at least some part of the country is feeling now that the election is over?
Well, one of the problems is he's trying to get the approvals for these flights from the FAA and others, and it's like dragging their feet. There's always roadblocks, red tape. I'm shocked, quite frankly, that he's been able to do so many amazing things, notwithstanding all those roadblocks. I remember, once again, when I was a U.S. Senator, went out to visit Tesla, and then we went over to SpaceX. I touched and signed the first rocket that actually went up. And when I was in New Zealand, I dealt very closely with Rocket Lab, who are doing low orbit satellites. So, space is a new frontier. I worked very hard on a lot of those issues, and I commend him. And I think it's great that the president trusts Elon and Vivek to be another set of eyes. People that really have nothing to gain. They're wealthy enough. They don't need the jobs. They don't need the money, but they respect the president and our country and our situation enough to really step up and sacrifice a little bit for the benefit of the country.
Political opposition seems to be a recreational sport in D.C. In this case, I'm referring to the new group of Democrats who are floating the idea of an alternate cabinet made up of liberals who would supposedly represent the other side of issues. Even Democratic Senator John Fetterman has told party members on his side to stop freaking out over the Trump victory. For a guy who originally seemed like a bit of a misfit for the Senate, he's come around quite a bit to a lot of common sense, it seems to me. Am I reading that right?
Yeah, listen, I'd love to meet the guy. I've often thought of reaching out to him. I thought his stance on Israel was amazing. I thought he stands up to the craziness and wokeness of his own party. Just statements like this show that he is an independent thinker, which is very rare. He's almost like that blue dog Democrat that there were so many of them before. And just reflect back, JFK would not be allowed to be in his party right now. He was a hawk. He was a tax cutter. He felt very strongly about faith, and he would be welcome in his party. So, I commend them for that, and they can do anything they want, but no one really cares because they lost. And they lost because they're out of touch. No one wants an alternate cabinet. They want actually them to work with the administration to try to cut taxes, secure the border, and do a whole host of other things. That's why they lost. And they better wake up because, else they'll lose again.
Will we be back with more from former Senator Scott Brown in just a moment? Stay right where you are. We're back now with Scott Brown. The border mess is front and center already, and I can't think of any more clear case of why the illegals should not be here than the murder case involving Laken Riley. The accused gang member sitting in court with his headphones on, having been allowed to stay in this country despite multiple arrests, despite being given food and housing, yet he still tried to rape a 22-year-old. To her credit, she fought back valiantly for a long time until he killed her by crushing her skull. This case alone has changed a lot of minds about getting the gang members and the known criminals out as soon as possible, even using the U.S. military if necessary. It makes sense to me. What do you think about it, Scott?
Well, good. They're not supposed to be here, Alan. There's no way that a few housing complexes in Colorado should be occupied by Venezuelan gangs. There's no reason that our citizens should be either raped, tortured, murdered, in any way, shape, or form, or the people and young children, especially that are coming over, that are being trafficked, 300,000, give or take. And the Biden administration has no idea where they are. It's negligence. He better be lucky and thankful that the Supreme Court said that there is some form of presidential immunity, because if I was one of those parents, I would absolutely file a lawsuit against him. And we have to stop it. We have to secure the border once and for all. We have to make sure that all of those gang members and all those violent offenders are out of the country yesterday. And then we can work on the ones that are here and really have no reason to be here. We should get them back to their country in a compassionate way. And then we can start to, figure out if there are people here that we really want to be here, and then provide an opportunity for them to prove it to us.
Well, some Democrats are already arguing that the Trump policy of returning illegal migrants to their home countries is a bad idea and bad for the economy. The former housing secretary under Obama made their case.
It's going to require a lot of pushback. And at the same time, there's a danger in the American population that there's fatigue from resisting and pushing back. So these first couple of weeks, I think, are going to be crucial to see whether there's going to be that sufficient pushback and will to stop what would be a very cruel exercise in federal policy, and I think ultimately decimate the American economy if it's carried out.
Scott, this reminds me of the arguments made during the campaign, some of which strayed far from the truth. Trump wants to get the criminals, the drug dealers, the rapists, the murderers out first and stop more from coming in. Why would anyone in authority try pushing back on that? Do these people have kind of a political death wish? It looks like it to me.
Well, he said something about a crisis. The crisis is the fact that, this administration let him in, and we have a crisis right now. And it's not about the economy. It's about the safety and security of our families and our friends and our children. These people have no reason to be here. And I've heard, obviously the governor of Massachusetts and the mayor, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. That's fine. Go ahead. But I guarantee you a lot of the citizens will move out. And I guarantee that a lot of the monies that you get from the federal government, that spigot will dry up. The president has tools to make sure that they adhere to the policies. Just to blankly deny a federal policy to say, we're going to protect them, we're going to continue to give them free stuff. It's infuriating for people who don't even have $500 to $1,000 in their savings account to prevent in the case of emergency. It's outrageous. And they still don't get it. I mean, really, you still don't get it. But they will, and we have to do it. It's just common sense. I'm sorry.
Well, before we go, I want to ask how things are now on the ground in New Hampshire. Earlier this year, you pointed out that there were any number of Trump supporters who were laying low, no yard signs or bumper stickers. I'm not asking if they're wearing MAGA hats now, but with such a big win, are any of them showing their hand a bit more publicly these days?
Oh, yeah. Well, listen, he was supposed to lose New Hampshire by 10 to 12. He lost by 3. And there were some areas that he, in fact, did very well. And as you know, I heard you earlier, the press secretary, Caroline Leavitt's from New Hampshire. She's the youngest in our country's history. She's a lovely, hard-charging, talented woman and, a real asset to the team. So, yeah, there are people here who still have their Trump signs up, but I don't see too many Harris signs up. And I don't even know where Waltz is. Is he still like somewhere in the country, or did he leave?
Well, Scott, when the phone call comes with your new appointment, don't forget your friends in Tennessee.
Thanks. I'm not holding my breath. I'm happy to be here and help with this. And if he calls, that's up to him, and certainly happy to serve. Thank you.
Well, we appreciate your service to this country, and I'm looking forward to the next chapter. I know some of us are praying. Scott Brown, it's always a pleasure listening to your common sense approach. We'll have you back soon.
Thank you, Alan.
In a moment, I'll have some thoughts of my own. Just common sense from a biblical worldview and a very good reason for hope in our lives. There's a tremendous amount of post-election angst, a lot of drama, particularly as we're heading into the holidays and imagining gathering with friends and families. Well, I want to remind you of a verse of Scripture. It's Romans 12 and verse 18. If it's possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. You know, biblically, peace is not the absence of conflict. It's just a calm assurance of God's abiding presence. Doesn't mean we have to win every discussion or be on top of every debate. There's a great deal of emotion on both sides of this political discussion these days. If you're happy about the election results, I would give you the advice they gave me when I was a child. They would say, if you win, act like you've done that before. And if you lose, have the dignity to treat those who won with respect. There's a tremendous amount of incendiary language that tragically has a home in far too much of our legacy media. With the incoming administration calling for sweeping changes and a new imagination for government leaders, I'm anticipating seeing some things we haven't seen before, outcomes that we haven't experienced before. So it's time for you and for me to become agents of change. Not just point at Washington and ask them to behave differently. Let's decide we will be different. We'll be different with how we interact with one another. We'll be different in the language we choose. We'll be different in the grace that we can show and the truth that we will tell. We have prayed for a free and fair election, and I believe God heard our plea. But we can't stop praying. Our prayers are just as important now as they were in the last few months. This is a time of transition, and we want everybody involved in this season to be able to walk through it in an orderly way, a safe way. My prayer is that we'll come through this transition peacefully and respectfully. With that, I believe we truly have more reasons for hope than despair. When we return, I'm going to read some of your emails. Thank you for taking the time to send your emails to us. Your thoughts and perspectives matter a great deal. Shirley from Texas writes, I pray multiple prayers daily for Israel and the hostages. I have heard of 4 Americans being held and that they're still alive. Why have we not been told their names? I would love to pray personally for each one. Well, Shirley, I have a lot of questions around that hostage crisis. It seems to me on October the 8th, when we found out what had happened in Israel, that the United States government should have said that those hostages will be released immediately, or we will see to it that you're hunted down. The passive attitude and the commentary about humanitarian aid for people who kill Americans, take American hostages, makes all of us less safe in the world, and I don't respect the administration for the attitude they've held. My prayer is that President-elect Trump and the ambassador nominee, Governor Huckabee, will make a difference in the upcoming months, and we'll see all of the hostages released. I'll join you in those prayers. Kristen from Pennsylvania. Pastor, thank you for bringing George C. back to explain clearly with high-fidelity comments on how complex, changing, and improving our current economy is. Great comments on how Elon Musk can be an excellent addition to our assist President-elect Trump to improve government functioning and endeavor to balance the budget and pay down the astronomical debt. Those are some big jobs, but there's some capable people. I think if we will pray and have the courage to stand with them, I'm anticipating a torrent of complaints and pushback and obstacles from the professional political class in D.C., and it's going to take the affirmation of the American people. We're going to have to continue to vote, not in the ballot box, with our prayers, with our voices, with our perspective, in order for them to have the support they'll need for these changes to take root and make an impact. Terry in Ohio says, Pastor Allen, thank you for your uplifting ministry. Recently, I've been a regular viewer of your Alan Jackson Now program. Thank you so much for your honest reporting and discussion of current events. It's been a welcome change from mainstream news, and I truly appreciate you. Well, Terry, thank you for your kind words. I look forward to the day when telling the truth as a part of sharing the news becomes mainstream again. In the meantime, we'll use every format that God makes available to tell the truth to whomever wants to listen. Finally, Michael from Bermuda wrote, good day, your show along with Huckabee and Stackleback tonight are so refreshing that they have renewed my faith that one can truly get objective news. It was with great interest that I read today that the mainstream media has taken a major hit as a result of their extremely biased reporting. It's good to know that if one searches genuinely, they can find decent and honest programming and news. Thank you. You know, I think the simplest solution is all of us decide to become people of the truth. That'll make it all the way, even to Washington, D.C. Well, thank you for your comments. Make sure you send your emails to comments at alanjacksonnow.com. From all of us here in Nashville, thank you for joining us tonight, and you have a wonderful evening.